Wisconsin Republican Scott Walker joins us now. Good to see you, Governor Walker. So let's start there, right where it is. Is there a plan, do you think? And what do you make of the execution on trade?
Well, I do think there's a plan. Anyone who's read The Art of the Deal knows that President Trump is always looking to increase his advantage and get whoever he's negotiating with to come closer and closer and closer to where he's at. I remember years ago when I was in office as governor talking to him when he went up to Canada for the G7. And remember, that was the time he told me in advance he was going to do this. He offered to get rid of all American tariffs in return for them doing the same, but they didn't take him up on that. So I think he'd still like to get to that. But what he wants more than anything is to have American consumers and employers and workers be on a level playing field, as well as getting some help from Mexico and Canada when it comes to fighting fentanyl.
What should we be talking about in terms of what people expect in the interim? You know, your state, Wisconsin, there's been some reporting to suggest it would get hit harder than other states, right? I saw something here with the headline, I think it was Reuters, that Trump's tariffs create the quote-unquote Wild West on the factory floors of Wisconsin. They talk about Wisconsin being one place where a full-on trade war could be particularly painful, given its economic close ties with Canada and the fact that it's a key political prize has been determinative in these elections in terms of who gets to the White House, and it's swung back and forth between the two parties. So what about that? What would you say to the people of Wisconsin about all of this?
Well, I think you're going to see a very short-term war if there is one, because in the end, whatever they're doing to retaliate, they can't win. EU and Canada can't win this war. They're better off trying to get to a resolution here and pay attention to what the president's asking for. In the case of Canada and Mexico in particular, it's about getting some relief when it comes to the border, and particularly the fight against fentanyl. And when it comes to trade overall, try to level the playing field. They get to that, we're going to see this go away quickly. I don't know that it'll be as quick as Bogota was to back away when the president threatened tariffs against them. But remember, that happened within an hour. That was different circumstances, but I still be relatively short term.
Okay, it's interesting because in the short term, though, you can have a lot of pain. You know, people's retirement accounts. We've seen that. You know, it falls, and people start to get nervous. Even people who support the president, generally speaking. What do you think it looks like on the other end? I mean, what are they actually trying to do here? Because if they're doing, like we saw Peter Navarro, who's the president's trade advisor, kind of articulating some of this. We took some of it live at the White House last hour. They want to do big things, and that could take a while, even if they're right about it. What does it look like on the other end?
Well, I mean, I think in the end, you're going to see better circumstances for American workers, a better environment in which you create wealth and opportunity here in the United States. That'll be good in Wisconsin, in my home state, and across the country. I also think reining in of all this out-of-control spending is already sending signals when it comes to inflation. You're seeing gas prices going down per gallon. You're seeing eggs finally going down to where they were before.
A lot of that's just because people think the economy is going to slow, right? You know.
Well, I think part of it, though, too, is remember the stock market ebbs and flows from day to day based on certainty. Once you get to a point where we start to figure out...
I mean the prices. You know, prices go down, like commodity prices will go down when there's a bad outlook, as you know, for growth. Like if people don't think the economy is going to grow, then it's oil prices. The reason they're coming down might not be great.
Well, I think it's a combination. Certainly the people I talked to last November across the state of Wisconsin, across the country, number one concern, even with students we work with at Young America's Foundation in college, they were overwhelmingly almost 2-to-1 concerned about prices, the economy specific to the high cost of things like food, gas, housing, and things of that nature. So things that this president and his team can do to get prices under control, I do think are a big benefit. If then a month or two down the road, you see things improve with the economy overall, not just in bringing prices down, I think that's a good one, too.
But do you think, like we're showing Navarro now, I think he thinks he wants a fundamentally different system. Like, you know, years ago, we didn't have an income tax, or, you know, 100 years ago, and then we brought it in. It feels like they want to go back to that in some ways and raise revenue for the government through tariffs. And that, I mean, you're, you know, kind of an old school Republican. That even for you wouldn't be necessarily the direction you would want to go, is it? You seem to want to use it as a tool to have a level playing field.
I'd love to have no tariffs. As Ronald Reagan did, and freeze trade. But remember, Ronald Reagan put tariffs against Japan, 100% electronic goods, put a 60% tariff on Japanese motorcycles when they were fighting up against Harley-Davidson, built in my state, one I ride as well. But that was short term. That was like a punch to get people's attention.
And it wasn't enough for Trump. He literally said Reagan was terrible on trade. Did you see that? He says Reagan was awful on trade. That's what the president said, the current one.
Well, but the interesting thing is the things he's doing right now are similar to what Reagan did in that regard.
Right.
He got back to fair trade. And I think in the end, what we saw, as I mentioned, that G7, President Trump offered to get rid of all tariffs if they did as well. And I think that's the key is you want to have free trade, fair trade, have it so that everybody's in a position where we just work off of what we do best, and that is innovate and provide the best products in the world out of the United States. If we don't have to pay tariffs, they don't have to pay tariffs, we're in a much better position. Doubt that's going to happen, but at least some sense of a level playing field would be good for the American worker.
Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.